Hi, my name is Nick Kuntz, and I'm reading Superman Volume 2, number 75 from January of 1993, which is The Death of Superman. This was written by Dan Jurgens, and the artwork was done by Brett Breeding. Superman, as we learned earlier in this class, was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Um, so Jurgens and Breeding, they did a bunch of work for DC, specifically Superman in the 1990s. So for me, that's sort of when I started becoming more interested in comics, and I was introduced through a friend of mine, a comic book fan, to this series. So whenever I picture Superman, I picture that same artwork that appears, in this era by Brett Breeding. In fact, the next time you're at a comic book store or Zia Records or something, the artwork of Brett Breeding is pretty recognizable. So essentially, here is the cover of this issue here. You can kind of see that. You kind of see the on the bottom there, the death of Superman. You see the torn cape in the breeze there. So just looking at that, you sort of know what to kind of expect from this issue. Because of that, it's actually the issue number 7 in a large arc. So there were 6 issues that came before it. Um, and this one is number 7. The other 6 are kind of leading up to it. But this issue itself is probably the second most famous Superman comic book that's out there. The most famous would be Action Comics number 1, which we studied earlier in this class. Um, and that comic, Action Comics number 1, was the birth and the origin of Superman. Inversely, this comic is the death of Superman. So like I said, there's 6 comics before this one, and then there's about 30 after this one that kind of complete the arc, the whole story arc here. So the story arc is broken up into 3 separate storylines. The first 7, which include this book, are called Doomsday with an exclamation point. Doomsday is the antagonist. Then the next 10, which is Act 2, is called Funeral for a Friend. And then the next 21, which is Act 3, is called The Reign of Superman with an exclamation point on it. So essentially, the plot is as follows. There's a giant creature named Doomsday that awakens from a slumber. What we kind of see is, and to believe, is like a crashed spaceship. So he's all tied up, but he manages to kind of get one arm free, and he breaks through, and he escapes from his captivity, and he just goes on a rampage and heads straight for Metropolis. So the Justice League finds out about it. They go to fight him without Superman. He's off doing an interview, and he literally single-handedly, Doomsday, just takes out the entire Justice League. He puts them in comas. He cripples them. I mean, he just destroys these guys with one arm, tied behind his back. In reality, um, so this happens. Then eventually Superman does show up, and they fight and they fight and they fight to a draw. They can't go anywhere. Supergirl even shows up to help out, and she of course is a peer of Superman. His strength, his abilities. And just to kind of show how strong Doomsday is, Supergirl flies in to help out, and Doomsday literally takes her out with one punch. Just hits her, and she's gone. She's out for the count. So that's how tough this guy is. So they keep fighting, and then until eventually Superman makes his last stand in Metropolis, and then he and Doomsday fight to the death. They kill each other. And then the rest of the story arc is essentially all these other heroes that try to take the place of Superman in his absence to protect Metropolis and the world, and then eventually Superman does return. So when this originally came out, um, kind of mixed reviews. The fans, the comic book collectors, my young self at the time went absolutely crazy for it. Never before had a major character like this, who is just, kind of the essential superhero, been killed off before. Nobody this major. It was just totally unheard of. So this series sold really well. It made DC just a ton of money. So as an added bonus, if you're a collector or maybe an amateur collector, or if you just want to go check it out, there are tons of copies of this comic floating around out there because they made so many. Doing research for this project, I've read anywhere between 2.5 and 3 million copies of just this Superman number 75 were made and sold by DC Comics. So there's 3 million copies of this issue floating around out there. So then the media, when they reviewed it, it was sort of a mixed bag. There were some members that loved it. It was a bold move. Nobody'd ever seen anything like that. And some absolutely hated it. They thought it was just a publicity stunt used to sell comics, and it kind of was. But those were kind of the two ends of the spectrum. And then maybe the most famous opinion out there was by Chuck Rosansky, who owned a comic book store at the time. This was kind of written a little bit after the fact, but basically he blamed this story arc and this issue specifically for the collapse of the comic book industry, thinking that DC Comics had gone too far with it because they essentially raised the bar so high. They killed off Superman that how could any other comic on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis, compete with that level of drama? I mean, how do you top killing Superman? So he blamed the entire demise from this issue. And then essentially the last review of it, I guess, and maybe the most important, was by Jerry Siegel, one of the creators of Superman. And he absolutely loved it. So he thought it was a great idea. He saw it coming, and he liked what they did. So there's that. So my analysis on the type of hero and the journey, Superman is sort of your quintessential hero. Doesn't have a lot of faults. Um, you know, Maybe you could say that he won't kill. Maybe that's a fault. I don't know. Maybe it's morality. But anyway, so regarding the hero's journey, all the elements in the comic are there. Now, this story, like I said, started 6 issues before that. Um, so I'm not going to frame it in the total arc, but what I am going to do is I'm going to look at just this issue and I'm going to find the elements that are there. So in this case, in just this issue, the call to adventure was that Superman is no stranger to developing or to defending Metropolis from bad guys. That's kind of par for the course for him. It's just what he does. But in this case, Doomsday was not just a normal bad guy. So of course Superman didn't realize that when they first started fighting. So it was kind of business as usual, and then it got real. So he doesn't really refuse this quest because when we pick this comic up, he's already fighting him. But what he does refuse is to do the one thing that he can't, which I referred to earlier, is he can't kill. That's not what Superman does. So there's a line in the comic from Lois Lane in the issue, and it says she's talking to Superman, and she says he wants to kill ... and you ... you can't. So what she's stating is that Doomsday has no moral code, um, and Superman's moral code, won't allow him to kill. So basically, Doomsday's going to fight to the death. Superman can't. That's not what he does. So at first, he refuses the quest. Now, eventually, Superman does realize that he's losing energy and blood, and if he goes down, everybody's going to die because Doomsday took out the Justice League already. So Superman emotes. He thinks to himself, I'm hurt bad, can barely stay conscious. So there's some onomatopoeia. Uh, must take him down. He accepts the call at that point, and then basically he goes in for the kill. So at that point, he enters the unknown. He's doing something he's never done before, and that's to try to kill somebody. Or something. So he does finally go in for the kill. He finds Doomsday's weakness, and then he kills him, and Doomsday also kills Superman in the process. So of course his supernatural aids in this. It's Superman, so he's got the strength, flight, heat vision, and he's got the inhuman endurance and stamina. Now he's also aided in this quest by the military and by Lois Lane. So it's kind of typically as he's fighting him, these other people are trying to help him out, but he spends just as much time getting them out of the way of Doomsday as he does actually fighting Doomsday. So these people try to help him, but they're not really helping him. But the big form of help he does get is not physical help, but it does come from Lois Lane, and that is for her. She kind of gives him the strength to do what he has never done before and what he's never had to do before, which is to kill somebody. He's got to kill Doomsday to save everybody. So in this comic here is another iconic image. Let's pull this up here, which is, there you go, That is Lois and Superman's last kiss. Before he goes off to battle. He's not completely messed up yet, but that's the last time they kiss, and then obviously after that he goes and he fights to the death. So the test and the ordeal here in this case is pretty obvious. It's a life and death struggle with an opponent that's unkillable. And then in his case, the reward is that he saves Lois Lane, he saves his best friend Jimmy, and of course he saves his adopted home of Metropolis, even though he dies in the process. And that is, the first attempt at restoring the world kind of back to what it was before. So the conclusion is I really enjoyed reading this comic, and I actually have myself just a few issues left to collect in this story arc, I think 3 or so, and then I've got the whole arc complete. I'd recommend this to anybody, the arc itself, the whole story arc itself, or just this issue, to anybody interested in comics. And in conclusion, this issue, Superman Volume 2, number 75, epitomizes the hero's journey and is a classic comic that everyone should enjoy. Thank you.